What's up, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of DannieBSpeaks, the podcast. This week, we are going to get a little personal, but not too much because I'm still not going to expose too much of my business, but we're going to get a little deep. So this episode, we're going to talk about a journey. This is a long journey of pretty much finding oneself, I guess you could say. Not only that, but a journey being able to love oneself and to respect yourself as well. I'm going to break this set down into different parts, so there won't be so much information in one episode. But also, so one episode won't be hours long because, ain't nobody got time for all that. Now, hopefully, speaking on my journey, which I am still on, by the way, I feel you should continue to grow as a person. So that's why, it's continuous. I'll probably be working on myself for the rest of my life. And hopefully, with what I have done to make myself a better person for myself first, so that I could be a better person for other people, hopefully, I can help you out as well. So I am titling this series Stepping Out on Faith because what I have done to accomplish and become the person that I am today, I had to step out. I had to step out of myself and be sure that this is what I wanted to do. And not only what I wanted to do, I should say what I had to do, what I needed to do to move to another level in my life. I felt very stagnant. I was depressed. I was using other outlets to try and deal with that depression. I didn't know what it was at the time. I kind of figured it was, but I didn't know for sure. My health was bad. I was at a dead-end job that I could not stand, that I tried to get out of for years, but I kept being pulled back. That's my fault. I constantly had this tug of war with myself. I really didn't know who I was. As sure and as confident as a lot of people thought I was and as I appeared to be to some people, I really wasn't. And it was all a facade. Now, I think it was Keenan Ivory Wayans who made a quote a long time ago, and I have to find this quote, and I want to add it to my quote book. He said pretty much that comedians, and I don't consider myself a comedian. I have done comedic writing, and, I think I can be a little funny at times, but I'm no comedian. But he says comedy and comedians are usually people who are trying to find an outlet to deal with some kind of tragedy. And this is not the exact quote. And what I took from that was he's basically saying that it's a disguise. And if you don't want people to feel the way you are, the way you're feeling, then most likely you want to make people laugh, which I enjoy making people laugh. I do. Because believe it or not, I like to laugh, and not just at shady things, which that, gives me a whole kiki, but I like to laugh. I like to have a good time. And I saw myself pulling away from that. I saw myself trying to please so many people. And not only so many people, but mainly people that weren't there for me when I needed things, when I was calling out for help. And it gave me a sense of how selfish people can really be, regardless if they're family, if it's a friend that you've known for years, even since childhood or, whatever. I mean, when you sit back and you really evaluate what's going on with your life and the people that you surround yourself with, you really have to look into that. And you have to first start with looking inside of you. That is the most important thing. So regardless if I, take care of my nieces and nephew, regardless if I help take care of my grandmother, regardless, if I do things for my parents, regardless, if I do things for other people, it's because I want to do them, not that I feel obligated to do it. And it may sound a little selfish, but sometimes, and especially when you have put yourself to the back burner for so long, you really have to become a little selfish. And on the Girl You Know What podcast, I think it was the first or second season, I can't remember, but we had Ashley from She's So Selfish on our podcast. And I subscribe to her newsletter, and you can actually go on, I believe you can go on my website and you can get a link to her website, but she sends out a monthly monthly newsletter. And it really just tells like how it's okay to be selfish. And you shouldn't feel guilty for being selfish. And some people can look at me and say, well, that's easier for you to say because, you don't have kids. You're not married. I'm not even in a relationship. So it's a little easier for me to say that. And yes, that is true. But each person is an individual. Each person is different. You can be selfish to an extent and have a family. There's nothing wrong with putting yourself first in certain situations, and not just on your birthday, not just on Mother's Day, not just on Father's Day. It's okay. It's okay. And I know it gets harder, not only if you have a family, but if you're a single parent. I get it. I don't know how it is, but I get it. I get that it is harder for you to put yourself ahead of other people, but you can. And like I said, it's different for each individual. I'm never going to compare myself to someone who has kids. I'm never going to compare myself to someone who's currently married or even currently in a relationship, because I'm not. I can only be me. So that is where all of this came from. And as I mentioned in the intro, I am going to do this in certain parts. We're going to talk about every aspect of my life that I really had to sit there and look into and really focus on, what are you doing? Who are you? What have you become? And it was someone I didn't like. So let's get into it. So this first part, we're going to talk about career. Now, a lot of people who know me know and have been following me for years know that I was at a job that I could not stand for a long time. And it wasn't necessarily that I couldn't stand the job, because the job wasn't hard, but I just felt like I wasn't going anywhere. And I could tell that from early on. So I truly had to step out, and I'm going to tell a story. Okay, that sounds cheesy, but I'm going to tell how I started that journey to where I was just like, okay, I have to just dig down and just do it. I have to go for it. So stepping out on faith is a old saying. A lot of people say it and use it for different situations in life. For me, it's not necessarily about your faith. It's about believing in something, and mainly yourself, and just going for it and doing it. So stepping out on faith, or just stepping out of your comfort zone, you could even say, it can be an extremely scary time. And this can be at any age. But especially the older that we get, I think the more scary it becomes. So for me, when I started approaching my mid-30s, I began having these epiphanies. Up until that point, I thought that I pretty much had everything figured out. I did. I thought all I needed was a higher paying job, and after that was obtained, I would just sail along and blow wherever the wind would take me until retirement. Just pay me. I was at that point in my career where I was just like, just show me the money. Whatever, I'll deal with what I need to, but just give me what I deserve to be paid. And of course, a little bit more. However, I didn't realize that it was more than my job that was bringing me down. And I had to step back and really get into that. I mean, look, my health wasn't good. I'm not going to lie. We're going to be transparent here. I reached over 300 pounds without barely eating. And that's a whole nother story. My grandfather, he started showing signs that something wasn't quite right with him. Just my overall relationship with myself was just atrocious. Yes, I said atrocious because that's how deep it got. I was always on edge, but didn't know what was wrong with me. So I had to sit back and view myself from the outside looking in. It wasn't that I cared what anyone else thought. I never gave a shit about that. I needed to figure out basically what was making myself so miserable, because truly I was miserable. Mentally, I just wasn't there. I would use social media, my writing, pretty much any and everything else to try and avoid getting to the root of my real issues. It was an escape, so to speak. So much so that if I didn't post on social media as much, people would reach out to me and ask if I'm okay. And I mean, I'm good now. I could be better. I think we all could be better. There's always room for growth and improvement at any age. And as I said, around this time, I was in my mid-30s. And I was just like, something has to change. And I have to be the one to make it change, to make the change. The problem was I had to realize that I didn't focus on myself and what was going on. I would continue to have these problems with pretty much everything in my life. And that's not a healthy or smart way to go about your life. Now, I've been known to do some dumb shit every now and then. And I guess dealing with real life issues is no different when you don't know exactly what you are looking for. So when I first started thinking about doing this particular episode, I was just going to focus on my career. But as I look back to everything else that was happening in my life, it was all fucked up. I mean, it was. I had so much to change. I had a lot of growing up, a lot of maturing to do. But damn, where do you begin? Well, let's just go through everything one at a time so I can explain how I stepped out and made myself a better person that I feel. The person that I can wake up and look in the mirror and feel more confident and comfortable in my skin. So as I said, this episode is focused on career. And I thought a career change, mainly more money, would help with everything. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. Yes, money is nice. And as I mentioned earlier, that was all I felt that I needed and I would be good. But definitely having a job you can at least tolerate is good too. Because you don't want to be stressed out. You want to at least be able to tolerate going into work, dealing with other people. You have to at least be able to tolerate that. You're not going to like everybody. You're not going to get along with everybody. You're not going to like everything you do. In saying all of that, something needed to change with my job because I had been with this particular company since I was in college. And after, about 14 and a half years, I was just at a standstill. I saw people who didn't have my education and or experience moving up to positions that I had been denied for. Then it happened. I finally got a call to interview for a dream job. Well, at least with this company, it was a dream job. I mean, let's just keep it real. It was a lot more money. It was like double my salary. And it was doing something that I really would enjoy doing. It would have been like some investigative work. So, I'm all for that. And better yet, my supervisor was in an entirely different state. So that was even better. When I first went on the interview, the first interview, I should say, I remember I didn't go into work this day because it snowed real bad, but I still had the interview. I had the over the phone interview with the supervisor who I'd been reporting to, and that's when I found out that they were in another state. They were actually in Wisconsin. I believe it was Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And the interview went great. I mean, we got along perfectly as you can, I mean, it went really great. It did. So just a few days later, I think the interview was on a Thursday or a Friday. I remember it was the end of the week. Early that next week, so a few days later, I got called for a second interview, and this one was over the phone as well. And that interview went even better. I haven't had a good interview, I think, ever. Even with jobs that I got. It was just amazing. I was like, okay, this is going good, but you still don't know because you're up against a lot of people, for these jobs. Even the higher jobs. Because there's always going to be somebody, if not has as much experience as you, but has more. So it was a big step. So then I couldn't believe it. I got called for a third interview. And this one was also over the phone because the supervisor wanted to be on all of the calls. And by that time, I pretty much figured that I had the job because usually if you get a third interview, that is usually where they let you know exactly what you will be doing. I mean, they tell you, what the job entails, but this gets more detailed, like what you're going to be doing. Just introducing you more to what the job is about. And of course, it's not official yet, but I was pretty confident to say that I got the job. So 2 more weeks went by and I didn't hear anything, which is standard, sometimes it could be longer. So I just reached out to the supervisor and she told me she was surprised I hadn't heard anything, but she said I should be hearing something within the next week for sure. She's going to try to push it along. So about a week after I reached out to her, I got the call. The what I've been waiting for. So I got the job. And I was just like, oh my goodness. After all these years, I'm finally going to get paid what I deserve. I'm finally going to be in a position where I will be actually doing something that interests me. Not just to have a job, but this actually is something that really is up my alley. So how it works is they go through everything. The HR mumbo jumbo, all that stuff. Then they tell you your starting salary. They always wait, So after they go through all that, they ask you if you accept the offer. And of course, you say yes, no, or you can just say tentative if you feel that you need to negotiate something. But baby, when I heard that salary, I felt a hard chill come over my body, and not in a good way. So remember I told you that the starting salary for this job was like double my salary. These fuckers offered me a lateral pay for the first year of the job. Where are we doing that at? When does that happen? So, but after the first year, not only that, then my salary can be negotiated to the salary that the job actually started out at. You know, the salary that was actually on the job announcement for that pay range. So let me get this straight. You want me to do VP level work for an analyst pay? I pretty much told them good fucking night. You know, I was so offended. I wasn't shocked, that's the thing, but I was just more offended. And I didn't give a shit. I was just like, I let that HR rep have it, and not in a bad way, because the way that she was talking, it was like very condescending and almost like, you don't think that you're going to go from this salary to that salary? Why not? Other people do it. You forget, I have been with this company for years, and I have seen people jump pay grades like that, or whatever they used to call them there. And it's not even really a lot. It's just a next step. So I told them that if they don't give me the salary that is on the job announcement, then there's nothing further to discuss. So I guess she let the supervisor know how I felt, and the supervisor called me and gave me some bullshit explanation of why they were going about it that way. Talking about it was a huge jump in salary for someone to take. Since the fuck when? Like I said, I have been here, I have worked with people who went from this pay grade to the other one with no problem. Obviously, there was a reason that I got this job. You knew what my current salary was. So you think I was just stupid enough to be lowballed like that? I am now at what they call technically a vice presidential level work within the company. You weren't necessarily a vice president, but, you know, it was VP level, basically. I don't know why they called it that, but, you know, it is what it is. But just saying, they weren't trying to give me what the salary was on the job. Like I said, I've seen it my entire career there, where people have gone from one salary to another. Now, years ago, when I first started working at the company, one of my supervisors, I still think they got fired, but, you know, they just, of course, told us they left the company, but I think they got fired. So anyway, I was a lead. They asked me to step in until the post came out for, you know, to become a quote unquote acting supervisor. There was no pay grade in that, but I was young. I did it because I felt like I was helping out. And when a posting came out, of course, I had to apply for it. And I said, you know what? I'm not applying for the supervisor job, because I've been doing this. I've been, you know, helping the team out. The numbers are going up. Because they actually had a supervisor on the team that knew the work. So that helped. But, you know, they don't want that. They just want somebody who's going to babysit. And like I said, I was young. I was probably like barely in my mid-20s, you know, not long out of college. They were probably like, we're not going to give this little girl, you know, a supervisor position, which it was bullshit, because it was pretty much like an overrated call center, even though we weren't on the phones, but whatever. When they told me that I had to apply for it, you know, I was just like, at first I was like, okay, that makes sense. But then I was like, you know what? I applied, but I applied to get the fuck out of there. That's what I did, and I did, and did. But you see, this is where private companies can get away with that type of shit. You know, there's no union where you can, you know, go to somebody and have them negotiate it for you, get all the information, get all the tea, and figure out, you know, and fight for you. There was none of that going on. So it was what it was. So, of course, I turned down the job. And from that moment on, from that exact moment, I promised myself that I was going to get out of that place, and for good this time, because I had left a couple times. Yeah, I left this company a couple times, but I came back within an amount of time to get my time back. I went to one job and got laid off, and then I went to another job, and it wasn't what, you know, basically they lied to me, you know, because it was another private company. I should have known then. Lied to me about what the pay was, and I actually had it in writing. These dummies put it in writing, and the company had to give me the salary that was in writing, but I just never was happy there, of course. You know, I was more happy. I've said it, well, not happy, but I said, if I'm going to deal with bullshit, then I'm going to go where it can be comfortable bullshit. You know what I'm saying? A company that I've already put time into. And, maybe this time will be different. I always thought about that. So, needless to say, yeah, that didn't always turn out, the way that I wanted to. But, that's when you just decide to move the hell on. So I started applying my ass off. But at this time, like before, I wasn't just applying anywhere. I wasn't applying at any private companies. I don't care how big the company was. I said no. I told myself that if I was going to start over, it was going to be somewhere that would benefit me. I only applied for government jobs, county, city, state, and federal. That was it. I said, I need somewhere, if I leave this company after all these years, because obviously I'm not going anywhere. And not saying that I couldn't have got another chance, but with that little situation that happened, I was done. I didn't give a shit. So the thing was that I had been applying at this point to these places, these government jobs at all levels, like I said, county, city, state, and federal. But something on my resume just was not clicking to even get an interview. I remember, I think it was back in 2000 and maybe 12 or 13. But I remember I looked at how many applications, and these were just applications online, because I had been applying for the state back when we did the paper applications before they started having you apply online. I had applied for over 120 jobs and only had one interview at that time out of 120 some jobs over the years. So something I was doing wasn't clicking and I just couldn't get it. So I was like, okay, I got to do this right this time. I got time, let's get this done. Let me work on this. So I worked on my resume. I used my resources. I researched online and I asked people who worked in these jobs, what do I need to do to get my resume to hit that algorithm? All I needed was a chance, just a damn interview. That was it. And what do you know? My research and sources paid off. I finally got a call for an interview. And it was somewhere that I always wanted to work. And this was somewhere that I hadn't applied too much because I thought it was going to be far-fetched, for me to get on here, which I'm just like, now I'm like, girl, what were you thinking? You should have been trying to focus more on getting over here. So, like I said, my research paid off. I finally got a call for an interview. Then I got the job where I always wanted to work. Now, it took about almost a year from when I applied for me to start, but after 5-6 months, I basically knew I had the job. They were just slow as hell, which, I mean, that's how it goes, but they're much quicker now. But when I started, they were known to be slow. So the thing was, there was a catch, a major catch. And this is where I had to really sit back and step out and be like, okay, what are you going to do, sis? You finally have the job that you wanted. You got your foot in the door. You're there. So there's no way that you're not taking this job. But because I didn't have any government experience, even though I had education down, I had experience in this field down, but I had to start at a lower pay grade. And I mean, it was a much lower salary than I was currently making. And I mean, I just turned down the job because I was being lowballed. But to me, this was a little different. In the end, I knew that if I just got in the door, the benefits and opportunities, that I would be gaining would be so much worth it. I felt that. I believed that. So I took the job and took a major pay cut. I mean, major. It was scary. I mean, it was so bad that when I saw my first check, my hard ass almost cried. I mean, I was just like, because they give you your first check as a paper check. I got that check and I was just like, I mean, I just could not believe, because I hadn't seen anything that low probably since I first started working at the company that I left. I mean, and that was at a time when it was the early 2000s. You could afford to make a little less money. I mean, my rent was probably barely $400, and that was a nice apartment in a good area. I think I had my car payment. I think I did end up getting a car payment, and I think it was like maybe one something. And my insurance was not much at all. So, but things were cheaper back then, and I was younger. It was different. And I wasn't expecting to make a lot of money back then. But now, I mean, No lie. I mean, I was panicking. Like, how am I going to survive for another year on this salary? Because I thought I had to wait a year to post out. That was just not post out, but to post for another, yeah, I mean, kind of post out, but you can still stay in your same area if they have higher pay grades in that area. Finally, things started looking up for me. Because of my experience in education, I didn't have to wait until my year-long probation was up. I was able to start applying for higher pay grades, and only 5 months into the job, I not only jumped one pay grade, but two. Within 5 months of being at this new job, I pretty much was making just a little bit under what I left the other job for. Those 5 months, and even, I'm not going to lie, even after I got the pay grade 2 grades up, it still was like, I was still battling with the funds, because I was used to living a certain way, being able to do certain things, but I had to be patient. And I had to sit back and say, things are going to work out. You did this within 5 months. Keep going. So 2 years later, I got another promotion and another pay grade increase. So now within 3 years? Yeah, within 3 years of me leaving that company, I started making more money than when I left. So not only that, then this past summer, you guessed it, another promotion and another 2 pay grade increase. So I am now not only making the most money that I have ever made in my life, but I'm also making much more than the job I was offered at my last company. Well, the salary that I should have been making. But I had to step out. I had to step out on faith. I had to take that drastic pay cut because it was a lot. I had to start over. And I know, trust me, I know everyone can't do it. But if you have the opportunity, do it. I'm telling you. So now, almost 9 years later from me leaving my previous job, I am in such a better place in my career. And it took me less than half the time I was at my previous job. So when I was 35 years old, by this time I had, lived a little bit. 35 ain't young. It ain't old, but it's not young. Especially when you've been working and you're taking care of business, you're taking care of yourself. If you have a family, 35 ain't young, not at all. But I took that leap, and looking back on it, it was the best decision that I ever made in my life. Thank you all for taking the time and tuning into this episode of Danny B Speaks, the podcast. Be sure to check out my other solo podcast, True Crime with Danny B Speaks, where I discuss one of my favorite things, which is true crime. I also have a third podcast, which is a collaboration with my good friend Keisha of Wellness and Women. That podcast is called Girl, You Know What. You can also check us out over on IG at girl_you know what. You can listen to all 3 podcasts on my website, DannieBSpeaks.com, on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Amazon Podcast, Audible, Spotify, and my YouTube page, which is Danny B Speaks. Also on my YouTube page, you can enjoy nostalgic videos, commercials, reviews, music mashups, and other original content. So be sure to subscribe to my YouTube page at Danny B Speaks to get into that. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Danny B Speaks. If you have Apple Music and want to listen to some good playlists, follow me on Apple Music, where I share playlists that I have created myself, and they're various genres of music. So whatever pretty much you're into, well, not everything, but I'll basically have different stuff on there. And on Apple Music, I am at Tahir Ali. If you need to reach out to me for any business inquiries, such as promoting your business, products, anything like that, on my podcast, on my website, on my social media platforms. If you want to discuss collaborating with me or sponsoring me to be a guest on the show, anything like that, hit me up at DannieBSpeaks@gmail.com. As always, I appreciate you all, so be sure to continue to support or start supporting the Danny B Speaks brand. So until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Be safe out there, and I will catch you all on the next one. Peace, y'all.